Brutally Honest with Jasmine brand. I'm super excited today. I have with me radio personality, entrepreneur, podcaster, boss lady, and you're also my friend, Angela Yee. Welcome.
Thank you, Jasmine. What a pleasure. And congratulations on Brutally Honest.
Thank you. And we have some congratulations to give you, but we'll wait till later in the show.
Okay.
But because you are my friend, you're my good friend, you drive me crazy. But we're going to start with a shot, okay?
Okay.
Angela,
now, normally I don't drink, but because it's Jasmine.
You normally don't drink? Okay.
Cheers. Cheers. Congrats to us.
Congrats to us. We could just sit.
All right. I was trying to do it all.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get started and jump right in. I think a lot of people know you from being a radio personality and also for being an entrepreneur. But I do want to start with, you kind of started in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
You worked with Wu-Tang.
Yes.
Which is major. How'd you get that job?
So Wu-Tang, this is an interesting story. The studio where we record Lip Service, Engine Room, the guy who owns it, he was best friends with my ex-boyfriend from when I was in high school, right? So they went to Howard.
Okay.
And so my boyfriend at the time was like, oh, this is my friend. He was friends with somebody that worked at Wu-Tang.
Okay.
And so he was like, they're looking to hire an intern. I think he would be great for the job. And so I said, okay. And I went to an interview. It was like a summer internship.
Right.
And so they ended up hiring me right there on the spot. But that's how the whole connection happened. It was my friend Scotty, who was best friends with my ex-boyfriend, who had a friend who worked at Wu-Tang. So I did the internship. And then when I graduated, Divine, who was Riz's brother, he was the CEO, he ended up hiring me.
Okay. But when you were intern, what kind of stuff were you doing? Because you were still at Wesleyan.
Yes. So it was just a summer position. And this was in the Staten Island office.
Okay.
So I ended up working for Wu-Tang Corporation, but my internship was at Wu-Tang Management.
Okay.
And Mook was the manager for Wu-Tang. And so basically, it was the Wu Wear store was there. So a lot of times Power would be in and out of the office.
Okay.
It would just be me kind of answering the phones, being there. If they had shows or anything in the New York City area, I would just kind of be there to be on hand for support for whatever anybody needed. But I was basically scheduling things, answering phones, taking notes at meetings, making sure that I let everybody know what was going on.
Okay. So you basically were doing everything like a typical intern.
Yeah. Or like if somebody's cousin got arrested or something like that, it would be me that would have to like go down. I actually almost went to jail too because I didn't know my license was suspended.
So what happened? Tell me the story.
So one of the guys, their cousin, was riding a motorcycle. I don't want to tell on people.
Okay, go ahead.
His cousin was riding a motorcycle and didn't have a license. He got pulled over. They were going to confiscate the motorcycle. They needed somebody with a license to come down and get it.
Right.
I didn't know my license was suspended.
Why was your license suspended?
I probably didn't pay tickets or something.
Okay.
So I go down there to go get him. And they're like, your license is suspended too. And it was a Friday. And they said, you're going to spend the weekend in jail.
No, they didn't.
They did. But then because I worked at Wu-Tang and they were so popular there, they did let me go. But they were like, you have to take care of this right away.
That's funny. Okay. So you interned, you went and you finished college. When you were in college, what was your degree in English?
English.
English. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about you getting hired full-time at Wu-Tang. Were you considering other work, other jobs?
My first real job lasted 2 days. I worked at a temp agency.
What were you doing for the temp agency?
Opening envelopes.
Okay. And that wasn't fun, I guess.
No, it wasn't fun at all.
Okay.
It was exhausting.
So you ended up, you got offered a full-time?
Yeah, so I was doing this temp work because in my head, I was an English major. I was going to be like an author.
Okay.
And just write books and have this like day job, but at night be this famous author. That's what I thought. And so I hated it. After 2 days, I just didn't go back. Okay. And I was like, all right. So I also had interviewed at other places. I interviewed at Columbia Records.
Okay.
And so I thought that I was going to end up working there. And so I left there and I had on like a little suit and everything. And then I stopped by the Wu-Tang office. And so Divine happened to be there. And he was like, oh my God, we've been trying to find you. We want to hire you.
Why?
And so I ended up getting that offer at Columbia, but deciding I would rather have worked at Wu-Tang.
Okay. So what were you doing? What was your position title when you first started at Wu-Tang with full-time?
I was assistant to the CEO.
Okay.
And I had business cards. That was my first time having business cards.
Okay, that's major.
I was really excited. I had like a huge box of cards. And on the back, because Wu-Tang had so many different companies, it was like Wu-Tang Corporation. And then it said Wu-Tang Management, Wu-Tang Records, Razor Sharp Records. It had like every single Wu-Tang Publishing.
Okay.
So all the different companies were on the back. I remember being so proud. Like, Angela Yee, assistant to the CEO.
I remember getting my first business cards and I was super excited.
Yeah,
I remember
still have like a couple of them at home. Just I have like this box of things that are random.
Right. Okay. So what were you doing as his assistant?
So I was basically the first one there every day.
Mm-hmm. What time was that?
10 a.m.
Oh. Okay.
But I promise you, no one was there.
I'm sure.
But I would get there on time every morning at 10, and I was in charge of payroll. So it would be basically, and he still had to sign the checks, Divine.
Okay.
But I was in charge of making sure the payroll was taken care of. Everybody had their own corporation, so it'd be like Method Man Entertainment. He had everybody set up with their own LLC.
Okay.
And so I kind of was in charge of that. Old Dirty Bastard. A lot of people used to call like child support stuff, and he would be like, call the office and ask Angie. They call me Angie. Tell Angie to cut you a check. I wasn't even able to do that, but I kind of filtered through everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great job because they gave me a lot of power to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be the person that if there was a meeting with Steve Rifkin, I would be at that meeting.
Right.
Or with Ron Sweeney. I met a lot of people at Def Jam at the time because that Method Man was on Def Jam. And so I might have to do something with like, Bimmy. That's how I first met Bimmy.
Okay.
If you know who Bimmy is, he was an A&R over there. But I would be the person that would like go with my boss to the meetings, or if he couldn't go, he would send me.
Okay.
And I also dealt with the accountant. And I remember when Method Man was buying a house, like I was the person that was making sure he got all the paperwork that he needed to get in order to make that happen. I was like everybody's assistant, basically.
Right. How long did you work there?
I worked there for about maybe 3 years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the biggest lesson you learned from working with them?
The biggest lesson I learned was, I think when I first did the internship, I had this misconception. I was like, I don't want to work there because it feels like it's going to be, a bunch of people just smoking weed and acting crazy, and I wasn't comfortable.
Right.
But they actually they were very family oriented,
mm-hmm.
and they did treat me like family, like a little sister. And so I think you can't ever judge a situation, because after that I went on to work at another record label, and you would have thought that would be the classiest thing ever, and it was the complete opposite.
Okay.
And so I think sometimes we have these wrong expectations when we go into situations. You think, and I found that to be true, like most places where you work, you think that the place that is supposed to be the classiest, that ends up being like the least organized.
Yeah.
And the place that you think the opposite can surprise you.
I want to ask you, what's your craziest Wu-Tang story?
Man, I have so many. I'm trying to think. Oh, one time we had a meeting. Also, we had set up a meeting for Old Dirty Bastard. And so I didn't think he was going to show up because he really never showed up to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember walking there. I was with the guy from them who did marketing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just going to go to the meeting with him, and Dirty showed up by himself.
Really?
Yes. So I was really excited. I was like, wow, I can't believe I got him, to come to this meeting. And so we're walking in the building, and then he meets a girl in the lobby.
He doesn't come to the meeting.
And left. I was like, damn, we almost had it. But that was when, there's times I've been with them in the club. They've gotten into fights.
Really?
Inside the club. Because there's so many of them. And it might not even be them. It could be like, they were on tour with Rage Against the Machine. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of backstage things. I remember one time on that tour, this girl was following Method Man around, and she was like just begging him, like, please. And then he was trying to be nice still. He was like, all right, I'm gonna go in the bathroom and take a shit. And she was like, okay, I'll wait. And she stood outside the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, that's crazy. And he didn't think, he like peeked his head out, and she was still there waiting.
So you used to be there when they used to be fighting and stuff?
Not all the time, but I've seen a couple of things.
So now it makes sense. Do you remember we were somewhere, and remember they started shooting or fighting, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here. You were oh, it's fine.
We were in Canawan. You were like, get my jacket, because your jacket was in the other room, and I was like, I'll get it for you.
I was like, no. But now it makes sense. I forgot you used to.
You were like, we gotta get out of here. I'm like, the fight's over. We're fine.
You're like, it's fine. We can stay. Which Wu-Tang member do you speak to the most often?
Jizza, because I used to manage him. Separately too, and I think I probably run into, I just at the Essence Festival, I was with Raekwon and Ghostface.
Okay.
And so that was a really special time for me because that was my first job. And at Essence Festival, the same day that I signed my contract for my own show, I ran into them they were performing, and then I went out with them afterward. And so we went to the club, and I remember it was Nas's party, and Jadakiss was there also. and Janelle Monáe was there. And yeah, shout out to Larry Morrow. He knows how to throw a party. And so I just remember feeling like this whole
Full circle kind of.
full circle moment. Like these are the people who I started out with. And then I just signed my contract. And here I am in the club with Ghostface and Raekwon.
Wow, you live a fun life. Okay, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm here with Angela Yee, and I want to talk about your start in radio. You didn't always want to be in radio.
Yeah, it was never my goal to do radio. I really was a marketing person. I really like in my head that I'd be doing something at a flashy advertising agency with a huge budget, taking people out to dinners, and going to conventions and wearing nice suits and things like that. But I ended up getting the opportunity to do radio, and I didn't want to turn that down. I think sometimes you get an opportunity that you're like, wow, this doesn't happen often. I have to take it.
How did you get the opportunity to work in radio or your start in radio?
Paul Rosenberg and my friend Tracy at Shady Records. I reached out to Tracy because I saw they were doing they were hiring at Sirius for the station Shade 45 that Eminem started. And so she was like, oh yeah, call Paul. He deals with them all the time. So I called Paul and I'm like, hey, they're hiring at the station. And I wanted to see if you could just get me an interview with Sirius just to do marketing. It was a marketing position. He was like, well, have you thought about ever doing radio? And I was like, no, but I would. And so I got my foot in the door that way. I got an audition thanks to Paul. And then I worked there like auditioning, probationary period for like 3 months, and then they hired me.
And so you started off on it. Like, did you test first, or you?
It was a test for months.
Okay.
It was like I remember the first day I came in, they were like, all right, well, come in tomorrow. We'll see how you do. And I'd never done it. There was no direction. No one gave me any notes. I didn't know what I was doing. I just showed up. I remember they said the show started at 8. And so I got there at 7.
Right.
No one was there. I was like standing in the hallway with the doors locked, like, somebody come please let me in.
That's okay.
And no, they showed up literally at 8.
Who was on air with you at the time?
It was Cypher Sound Show.
Okay.
And so he knew me, but he didn't know me that well.
Right.
And so he was like, what's this girl doing here? Because it wasn't like he brought me in.
Right.
And I remember when I first started, I didn't tell anybody that I was doing it because I didn't want anybody to know in case I didn't get the job.
Yeah.
I didn't want anyone to listen until I got a little better.
Yeah.
And so I was just really secretive. And every now and then somebody would be like, I think I hear you on the radio. Is that you? And I would lie and say, no, it's not me.
That's so funny. How long did you kind of audition, or with the trial period?
It was like 3 months.
Were you getting paid during this audition period?
No, I was getting unemployment.
Because I was going to say, how did you sustain yourself? How long were you there? And then you you had your own show. You had like lip service. You had like a lip service.
I ended up getting lip service while I was on the morning show with Cypher. So I think that in general in life, I'm pretty good at picking things up.
Yeah.
And so I can start to do something and be terrible at it. And then I'm really like a fast learner.
Okay.
And so when I first started, I was just really like all in. I wasn't going out. I wasn't doing anything else but trying to make sure that I was ready for my show every single day. And so I did so well. I had a segment on the show every Wednesday. And it was like all girls talking. It was just us. And it was fun. And it did so well. They were like, we want to give you your own nighttime show.
Okay.
And that's how I got lip service.
Was that a nightly or a weekly?
It was weekly.
It was weekly.
Yes.
Okay. So you were doing the morning show, and then you had this nightly weekly show.
Yeah, it was from 8 to 10. And then Green Lantern came on after me.
Okay. Who was on radio around the time that you were on Sirius? I'm trying to think of the era at that time.
I remember Cypher really wanted to be on Hot 97.
Okay.
And he did end up leaving to go to Hot 97.
Yeah.
Big Boy was still on in LA.
Okay. Yeah. He's been on forever.
Yeah.
He's a legend.
And it was a lot of people that Envy was on, and I met Envy because he also worked at Sirius.
Okay, so Envy was at Sirius at the time. Okay.
He was also at Sirius. It was a lot of DJs that were at Sirius, but also doing FM radio.
Gotcha. Okay. So was it from there that you ended up on the Breakfast Club?
Yeah, it was from there.
Okay, so tell us how you ended up on the Breakfast Club. I don't know how radio works. I mean, you and I are friends, so I hear more. But does someone call you, you test, you audition, or do they say, well, how does that work?
Sirius is really different than FM radio. So I feel like I was never in the system back then. I didn't know program directors. I didn't know like a lot of other people like that. And so the way that it started working was the first person that reached out to me was because Boogie D, he actually sent me a message on Facebook.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, we think you're really great. We would love to have you on the radio in Philly.
Okay.
But actually, before that, Hot 97 offered me the job when Cypher left
Okay.
to come with him, and I turned that down.
Okay. So when Cypher left, they asked you to come to Hot 97?
Yeah, with him.
With him, okay.
And Cypher really wanted me to come with him, but I did turn it down.
Why did you turn it down?
It just wasn't enough money, and because I had the opportunity to have my own show if I stayed.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so it was less money if I would have went.
Okay.
And I also would have been, you know, it would have been Cypher Sounds and Peter Rosenberg.
Gotcha.
And I wouldn't have been part of that.
Right.
When I could have had like the Angela Yee show.
You're right.
So I was like, I'll stay here and have my own show and make more money.
Okay.
And have my freedom. And so I stayed at Sirius, even though Hot 97 was like the biggest deal in the world.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I just felt like it would be kind of a backwards step for me.
Yeah. You are a money girl.
I'm a negotiator.
You're also a money girl.
Because, and you know what else I said to myself? I can take this opportunity back and get more money at the place where I am, because they wouldn't have known what to do if I left. And my show was doing really well. And so I went back and I did negotiate a higher salary, because even though they didn't know it was less money that I was being offered, I made it seem like it was more.
So that's a negotiating tool, trick.
Yeah, it could have backfired. They could have said bye, and I could have been making less money.
But you would have had another opportunity too, though.
Yeah, and I think it's also how you go in, because I told them I wanted to stay.
Yes.
I said, look, I really like it here. I want to stay here, but I have been offered more money for another opportunity. And they did say, well, what will it take for you to stay? Like, what is that? And I didn't ask, it wasn't an outrageous amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I did deserve it too.
Did you ask for anything else besides more money?
Nope.
Okay. Told you you're a money girl. Okay. Moving on. So let's talk about how you ended up on the Breakfast Club. You got a Facebook message from...
Oh, so Boogie D. So he wanted me to come to Philly to do the radio station there.
Okay.
And, you know, at the time, it was another money issue.
Okay.
Because I was like, all right, if I'm going to move to Philly and do morning radio, I need to make more money.
Yes.
And it really definitely was. And honestly, I'm glad I did that, because they came back around and offered me double what they offered me the first time.
Philly did, or?
Philly, after I turned it down. And then Atlanta approached me.
Okay.
Shout out to Frank Ski, because he was the person that really wanted me to come there. And then their manager, their program director, Reggie, reached out to me, Reggie Rouse. And that didn't end up happening. But he was trying to talk to me about doing a different slot other than mornings.
Okay.
And so
Reggie was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then New York came last.
Okay.
And so I remember I was at a meeting with with Jay Stevens from Radio One, and they were like, it was really nice. It's a great feeling to have those type of problems where everybody wants you. Like honestly, it was amazing. It was hard decisions that I had to make, but it was a good position. Those are good, hard decisions.
Right.
And so I was leaving from meeting with them. They were like, we want you right now. Like, we will hire you on the spot.
Radio One?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were like, can we please get you? And I was like, well, let me think about it. Because I also am not a fan of making decisions on the spot where there's contracts involved.
Okay.
You know, you have to have a lawyer read it. You have to negotiate. Whatever somebody gives you, you never just take it.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking back to the car, and what I learned from this is everybody in radio talks to each other.
Okay.
Because it's not a coincidence that I'm walking back to my car and then somebody calls me from 105.1. Somebody told somebody who was like, yo, call her now. And so I'm walking back to the car and they're like, listen, we have an opportunity for you here and it might take a little while, but are you interested? And I was like, absolutely. And I had to turn down the job in Philly in order to wait and hope that the job in New York would work out.
So you turned down jobs in anticipation of another job that hadn't really panned out yet.
Right.
Okay.
Because that's how radio is too. Like, they might tell you you're going to get something. Even with my new show, I knew about it for so long before I could talk about it. And so, and you're negotiating for a long time, it could fall through.
Yeah.
And so anything could happen. I mean, think about it. A pandemic happened.
Right.
And we have been talking about me doing something before the pandemic.
Okay.
And so there's people that had contracts on the table to be negotiated that happened, and then it just didn't go through.
Okay.
And so it is a really tricky business, and it is risky to say, I'm going to hold out and wait for this. But I ran into Wendy Williams and Kevin Hunter. It was a party.
Okay.
It was something like for T.I.
Okay.
And they were at the
It was
party.
in New York?
Yeah, it was in
Uh-huh.
New York. And I didn't really know them. Like I had interviewed Wendy on my show a couple of times, but nothing major. And so she stopped me and she was like, hey, hold out for the job in New York. Don't go to Philly. And I was like, because like I said, everybody talks. And so I guess she had heard about it. Somebody must have said something to her. And I was like, that is crazy. She was like, trust me. She was like, do not do that. Just hold out for that job. And I did.
Wow. So Wendy Williams gave you some good advice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where it came from or what, because she didn't really know me like that.
Yeah.
But at that moment, it felt genuine. But, and I already had kind of thought that because New York is the number one market.
Right.
And so when you talk about that, and then it'd be nice not to have to move. It'd be nice to do radio in a place where you grew up and know people and you're familiar. Because I think one of the things, and they had told me that I could take car service back and forth from Brooklyn to Philly every day and they would set it up.
Oh, wow.
But I said I wouldn't want to do that because I feel like if you're going to be representing an area, you should live there.
Yeah.
And so I really had actually started looking at places when we were having conversations, like, where would I live? I would want to live in the middle of everything so that I could get acclimated.
Right.
Because I don't think that it would be good for me to be a local person in the market and not know anything and be coming from Brooklyn every day.
Right. I think I'm with you. And I don't think I would want to travel to Philly either.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long commute every day. Can you imagine? I'd be knocked out.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, you would. Okay, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm here with Angela Yee. So the opportunity came around for the Breakfast Club. Is that and that was you getting out of there? So like, do they hit you again and say, hey, what we were thinking about doing this show?
So what happened was initially they said I didn't know what they wanted me for. I didn't know it was going to be the morning show.
Okay.
I didn't know it would be like a cast situation.
Right.
I just knew they wanted to hire me full time. And I told them, I said, if there's ever a full-time opportunity available, let me know. Don't think that I need to stay here.
Okay.
And so they did let me know. And we had a meeting. We ate at this Indian restaurant called Tamarind.
Okay.
I remember we all went there and sat down with the program director at the time, who was Cadillac Jack. And it was me, Charlamagne, and Envy.
Okay.
And he was like, we want to put you guys together. It was G-Spin at the time, this guy G-Spin, who it was actually his idea to put us all together.
Okay.
And that was our first initial meeting. And then we didn't get the contract for like a while after that. But once we got the contract, we had to sign it that same day and send it back.
Okay, hold on. So wait a minute. So this meeting that you all, did you guys audition or test together, do a chemistry test together? No. So you guys had never worked together.
I knew we all
knew
each
Envy,
other.
you knew Charlamagne.
Yeah, we all knew each other, but we had never like worked together.
You had never
but
worked with
I don't
Envy?
think a chemistry test would matter because it's gonna take a while to find
gel?
out, if you gel or not.
Okay. Were you apprehensive about working with Envy or Charlamagne had worked with Wendy? So were you apprehensive about working with either of them?
I really wasn't.
Okay.
Like I was fine. Some people felt like, I remember one person at Sirius telling me it's not a good idea because those shows get canceled all the time.
Okay.
And then why would you go from having your own show to being like just a name? If you get fired, it's still the Breakfast Club.
Right.
And I was just like, I'm going to just try it. I needed something different.
Right. When the three of you all met at lunch or dinner or whatever, were you all hyped? Were you like, we about to, were y'all like?
Yeah, we were excited, but until the contracts are signed.
Right, yeah.
Like I said, you can't get too excited about anything.
Yeah.
You just, walk away like, all right, we'll see what happens.
Right.
And I just went about life as usual.
So how was your first contract really good for someone coming into that situation?
It was good for me because I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because my first contract, I made double what I was making at Sirius.
Okay.
And that was a huge leap for me.
Yeah.
And so, it was decent. And I felt like they felt like they had to do that because I was leaving someplace.
Right.
So it was decent. It wasn't bad, especially for me, it wasn't bad. And I remember when they told me, I called Cypher to ask him, what, and he did tell me what he was making at the time.
Okay.
And so it is important for people to be able to have those discussions about salary.
I wanted to talk about the fact that obviously the Breakfast Club is huge. You are in the Radio Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Which is a big deal.
We made it.
Y'all made it. One of my favorite parts of the Breakfast Club is the fact that their interviews. The interviews are always, for the most part, super entertaining, lots of viral moments. How do you prepare for your interviews?
So the way that I prepare for interviews is I look at other interviews that they've done. I
Mhm.
look at their social media pages
Mhm.
to see what they're talking about, what's important to them. That's how you can tell what their thoughts are.
Yeah.
If they're trying to promote something in particular, you can tell who they're cool with.
Mhm.
And then if there's an album or a book or a movie, I try to make sure I watch that.
Right.
If I know anybody who knows them, I might hit them up and be like, hey, I have such and such coming. Is there anything that you feel like, would be a good, fun thing to ask them?
Okay. What's your most memorable interview? I know you get asked this a lot.
Jasmine Brand was on. No. Let me see. My most memorable interview.
Yeah.
I have so many. I mean,
Give me a few.
I think obviously my August Alsina interview, because that was during the pandemic, and that turned out to be like a huge story, for everybody.
Listen, I remember you calling me afterwards and being like, oh my goodness.
Like you went up, and then I didn't think he was going to leave it in there. I was like,
yeah.
But it was a good interview regardless, you
Yeah.
know, but then that just made it like a mainstream,
Right.
But, in all fairness, August did send that clip to Jada first and she knew, ahead of time. So he did send it to her and she was aware that that was going to happen.
From that interview, we have the term, what is it? Entanglement.
Because
did you say that word or was that August's word?
I asked him how did he disentangle himself.
Oh, okay. So then,
and then I think when she did her Red Table Talk, she said entanglement.
Okay. Other memorable interviews.
Let me see.
On the Breakfast Club, maybe.
Obviously, Donnell Rawlings. I remember we had one where everybody left and it was just me and him. And I felt so bad because his lips started quivering. And I was like, oh my God. And I had to tell him it was a joke. It was so funny to me. I was like almost crying. But then I also felt so bad because he looked so sad.
His lips started quivering?
Yes, because I was like, oh man, Charlamagne left and then Envy left because Charlamagne left. So I was like, we could probably do something like for rumors. And he was like, so not even locally? And I was like, and then he sat down and he paced back and forth. He sat down and I literally was like, is Donnell about to cry? And then I was like, is he about to say something crazy about them? Because they're in the other room.
Right.
And I was like, let me just end this now. And I was like, Donnell, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. It was a joke. I felt so bad. It was so sad. And so I had to end that one. But Donnell, he's always one of my favorites. I love Donnell to death. And he's so funny to me.
I like y'all relationship.
Yeah. So I would say always a Donnell Rawlings interview was a good time.
One of my favorite moments from the Breakfast Club is, what's his name? Trying to say y'all names.
Oh, Webby. that was him doing the afterwards.
Like a drop, right?
Yeah, doing the drops. And I'm like, he was like, Charlamagne. Y'all got some names on y'all.
He got some names on, boy. Y'all got some names on y'all.
I really like Webby. He's so funny to me. Remember he got baptized?
No.
Oh, yeah.
He got baptized?
Yeah.
Who was your hardest interview?
Hardest in terms of like what to ask them,
or just being like not awkward, but just like maybe not being as open, or maybe being some tension because of maybe like one of your co-hosts, or just something happened before they walked in the room. Or
I guess Birdman, that was the most tense one we've ever had.
Yeah.
We interviewed Erykah Badu and Jay Electronica busted in during the interview. That was funny though. He was like,
Was it something y'all were asking, or?
Well, no, she didn't even know he was there. So she was like, it threw her completely
It threw her off.
What is he doing here?
He's funny.
Yeah, but as far as like, I think usually if somebody really doesn't like someone, they're not going to come
on the show. Yeah.
I think Birdman like had his issues and realized he shouldn't have done it because I don't think he realized how bothered he was until he got there. And so you might say to yourself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then as soon as you get up there and it's about to happen, none of those things go down.
Right. And you had your questions and you wanted that.
I know. I had like a booklet of questions. I was so disappointed because I was like, this is going to be a classic interview. We got Birdman.
Right. Has he hasn't come on the show since then, has he?
No, but it's so funny. We were talking about like the last week and who we went. I said, we should get Birdman.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions about the show?
One of the biggest misconceptions?
Yeah.
Let me see. There's so many, but
give me a few. Or the ones you hear. What's something that you hear that is?
I think that people come in there and think that Charlamagne is going to be really tough and like it's not really that bad at all.
Right.
And usually people are like, ooh, like I think sometimes people feel like it's going to be an interrogation. It's going to be really rough
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
difficult. And they're always like, that wasn't so bad,
Yeah.
when they leave. So I think people have that perception.
Yeah. Let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm here with Angela Yee. You do the rumor report. Do celebrities ever get upset with you? Others, your friends? Or...
I've had people get mad a couple of times, and like, I heard it through the grapevine. I've had people have definitely gotten upset, but I also feel like when I report something, I never try to report things that are like private information.
Right.
So it's usually something that's been reported. I'm really careful about that. Or if it's something that I know that no one else knows, I'll make sure that I check.
Right.
And say, listen, I heard this. I'm going to report it and I'll let you know.
Right.
But, and if it's an exclusive, and I think people get more mad at you if they know you.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, Angela, why would you?
Right.
But I'm like, everybody else reported it. What do you want me to do? Or they'll be like, why didn't you call me and ask me? But in all fairness, I report like 30 stories a day.
Right. Yeah.
You're not going to call everybody and double check. And sometimes it's not like I think what we have to realize is something could be a huge deal to you, but to the rest of the world, it's just another story.
Yeah. How do you decide what you're going to report?
I try to pick headline stories that everyone's talking about.
Okay.
And I think about our audience and what do they care about. And then sometimes stories that are really unique.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a combination of things.
Okay.
Like I try to find stories that are headline stories that
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, you can't avoid talking about this.
Right.
And then I try to find some stories that are kind of bubbling and maybe they haven't been everywhere yet. So
Right.
we're really early on reporting it. And then I also try to find stories that I feel like this is what our audience cares about. They might care more about, like it might be a big story for everybody that Jennifer Aniston did whatever. But for our audience, maybe they don't really care that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Radio is very male dominated.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most difficult part about being the only woman on the show?
That we have such different perspectives and sometimes they don't understand where you're coming from, and I feel like we don't want to have to fight every single battle. I remember having this conversation and they're also like the guys I work with are married with kids and I'm not,
Okay.
So it's a lot of different things and you get judged a lot for stuff. And like sometimes they say things and you're like, I think about all the other people who are like me that are listening and how that might make them feel also.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I'm not a super sensitive person, but I can see how certain things can affect other people. And you have to think about that when you're in radio, who your audience is, and that there's a wide range of people who are not like you,
Right.
who are listening. And so there's times I remember we had a whole conversation about, and if you're in a relationship, being independent. And they were talking about how their wives depend on them and,
Okay.
and I was like, that's great. But I was like, it's great to be independent and know that you can depend on someone, but you don't have to. It's a choice.
Right.
So while I know that you can take care of things and I can rely on you for that, I don't need you for that. I just like to be able to allow you to do that. But they were like going so hard. I was like, all right, I give up.
Right.
And sometimes it's like you're just fighting. And it's like, why am I even arguing about this? We're just not going to agree on it.
Right.
And sometimes it just won't see your point of view, but there's never like a woman that could be like, no, actually Angela's, I agree with her.
There's no one to co-sign
because
with
it is different perspectives too. And so it doesn't have to be like, you're right and I'm wrong, but it turns into that a lot.
Yeah. Do you feel pressure being the only woman on the show? Do you feel pressure like to give a woman's perspective or to give a Black woman's perspective or?
I can only give my perspective, but
Okay.
where I'm coming from a lot of times is from that experience.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like sometimes, like even if I look at comments, people be like, Angela's so sensitive. She always goes so hard for women. She hates men. You can go hard for women and also love men.
Right.
And I think that people will try to call me a feminist. Like that's a terrible
Like
thing
it's a dirty
to
word.
be.
Are you a feminist?
Yeah, because the definition of a feminist is that you think women deserve equal pay for the same things that men do.
Right.
And if that's what a feminist is, then yes, I do feel like we deserve that. And so I think every woman should be a feminist. You should want equal opportunities and equal pay.
Right.
And I think men should be feminists too. I think men should want women to be compensated properly for what it is that we bring to this world.
Right.
And that's all it is. It's not saying that we're better than you. It's not saying we deserve more than you. It's just equal.
Right. What advice do you have for women who work in male-dominated spaces?
Get out. No, I'm kidding.
Which is not realistic.
I just think make sure that you have a support system.
Mm-hmm.
And so what works really great for me, even having my podcast and having times and spaces where I'm around other women,
Right.
is important to me.
Right.
You know, and people that are supportive of me, that I can still have fun and laugh, because when I go to work, that's work. And I like to leave that when I'm not there.
Right.
I like the fact that I have a life outside of that. Everything is not work.
Right.
And so when I do my job, I come in there, I'm on point. And then when I leave, I'm like, all right, that's done. And so it's important to separate what's work and what's your real life.
Right. You announced that you were leaving the Breakfast Club.
Hey now, I'm
Hey
still
now.
there. No.
You are still there. What will you miss most about the show?
No, I'm playing. I mean, I do our listeners honestly like the most, because we have certain people that call up all the time that I'm used to hearing. It's like your friends, for
Right.
real. And so I know I'll miss them, and hopefully they'll be listening to my show as well.
Right.
To Way Up with Angela Yee right after. But I know it's like different times and different things going on, and I'm establishing something brand new. You know, everybody that worked there, we had some times.
Yes.
So that's fun. And I think the ability, like on a Friday when everybody doesn't do interviews, to be able to be done with work at 9 a.m. I'll miss that.
Yeah. Yes, you will. This was a question from someone on our team. Why did you decide to tell the public you were leaving the show so early?
Well, it was a necessity, because we need to find people. So they need to find who's replacing me.
Right.
And I need to get a co-host.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a process too. So I have to be able to put that out there so that we can also post that these jobs are open.
Right.
So, and then I need a whole staff. And
You do.
so, yeah. And so that's part of the reason why we had to announce it.
Mm-hmm.
And also they have to shop my show to make sure, to see which stations are picking it up. We're starting off in a minimum of 30 different markets, but we have to be able to be like, hey, this show is going to be available. So it is a whole process. It's not like you can just announce it and 2 weeks later
You're out of here.
Yeah, you're out of there. It is listen, and I was thinking I was going to be done way earlier than I was.
Right.
And then it's also vacation time. And so they didn't think it was a good idea for me to start. Initially, I was going to start in October, but then they didn't think it was a good idea with Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's coming. So they were like, let's get through all of that. And our studio is moving from downtown to Midtown.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were also like, let's get you started in the new studio instead of having you in the old studio. So when I start in January, you know, it'll be after vacation. It'll be in a brand new studio. And it was just a lot of technical reasons. And so that's why. But I did think I would be gone a lot earlier. And even if I wasn't there still on the show, at least I could be preparing for mine. But I think they wanted to make sure that everything was like, you know, okay for the guys too.
Okay. There were lots of rumors about people that were replacing you on the show. What type of traits or characteristics or skills do you think the new person that will be joining the show needs to have?
Patience.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think they're going to hire 2 people, right?
Okay.
From my understanding. But I think research is important as far as like making sure. I honestly do a lot of my own research. And that's such an important thing, because everything changes like every minute. And so you might get a story, and then by the time you're about to report it, the person already responded. There's an update. They said it was false, or there's more to it.
Right.
And so a lot of times you're also looking at a story that you have and then searching to see if anything happened since then.
Okay.
So trust me, the guys don't do that. So you're going to have to be able to do that. And then sometimes even when you're relying on other people for research, it's not always correct or the way that you would do it. So it's really important to make sure that, you know, you're able to do that on your own. And then flexibility. It is going to be a lot of work to try to fit in right away, because, you know, we've been doing this for 12 years.
Right.
And so there is a certain type of rhythm. And so in order to establish that rhythm, you are going to have to really like go hard at making sure you're there. They're going to, you know, really have a lot of slack to pick up, because I think the guys are very comfortable and used to it, just like I am.
Yeah.
And so when you're coming into a new situation when things are established, you'll have to be really flexible.
Okay. Let's take a break right here. But when we come back, we're going to talk about your new show, Way Up with Angela Yee.
That's what we're here for.
Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm here with Angela Yee. I want to talk to you about your new radio show. You're going to have a co-host.
Yes.
Do we have an official start date?
Not official, but it'll be in January.
Okay. This may be a silly question, but how is your show going to be different from The Breakfast Club?
I think for my show, I already have a whole ton of segments that I'm planning to do.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of some of them.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that, and I feel like things are just really falling into place. It is going to be really positive and upbeat.
Okay.
And then I think there's things that we don't do on there that I really want to do, like for my show. You know, there's certain shows that I like a lot. I'll be talking about some reality shows because I don't feel like we do that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when it comes to movies, when it comes to television, even when it comes to going out, because now I'll be able to go to like album listening parties and do things that I can't do now because I wake up at 4:00 in the morning every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'll be a lot more involved in what's happening from a firsthand experience.
Okay. And you'll have a co-host. What are you looking for in a co-host?
I want somebody that is good at social media because I feel like I've like totally fallen off from that.
Okay.
Just because I've been so busy like day in and day out. I need somebody with a really great attitude that's upbeat because I like good energy around me. And then somebody who's prepared and takes it as seriously as I do, because as hard as I work, I can't be around any slackers.
Okay. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
No slackers. Okay, let's talk about the fact that you are an entrepreneur. You have 50 million businesses. Can you list all the businesses you have?
Okay. So I have the hair store, private label in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I have Drink Fresh Juice. That's my pressed juice company.
In Brooklyn.
Yes. I have Juices for Life. That's the juice bar in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I have Coffee Uplifts People, which is a coffee shop as well as a coffee company.
Mm-hmm. And
the coffee shop is in Brooklyn, but you can get the actual coffee beans online or at Whole Foods in the New York City area. Is that it? And then I do have an Airbnb in upstate New York.
Yeah. You have multiple properties.
Yes.
You're
I'm
into
in the
real
middle
estate.
of doing another building in Midtown Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I think that's about it.
Let's talk about lip service.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite.
You're on there.
Yes, one of my favorite podcasts. I come on a regular basis. I love that show. Have you always been so open about talking about sex?
Yes. I think ever since I read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Okay, as a kid, apparently you've been open. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I've always been good at talking about anything. And you know what's funny is that a lot of things I know how to do because I read about it. Like I would read about everything.
Yeah, you learned how to negotiate your salary by looking at a Marie Claire article.
I learned how to do oral sex from reading a Cosmopolitan article.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can read about anything.
Cosmo was really that girl back in the day.
Risque,
I don't know. I'm sure they still are that girl, but they really were like.
We learned a lot because it was like soft porn.
It was. I was like, Cosmo was. I was like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. So everything I like knew how to do, I would read about it, and that's how you learn how to do it.
Because I never thought about how do you learn how to do stuff. Like, how do you?
Yeah, because you could do it all wrong.
You can. Yeah. Okay, I was about to go down. We're not going to.
It could be painful.
It can be very painful.
Painfully wrong.
Painfully wrong. To date, what's your most memorable lip service interview?
We have so many. I'm glad that we did the King Von interview.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most popular ones. And I love that one because he was so much fun on there. And I think that for people to remember him by going and looking at that particular interview where you get to really see his personality.
Yeah.
And see how like just funny he was. So that was a great one. I think Black Youngster has always been fun.
Mm-hmm.
Trouble was like a member of lip service.
Yeah, he was on regularly.
And so I'm so glad that people got to see him that way also.
Yeah.
Because he was, when I tell you from the first time he ever came on, and he would always like hit me up and be like, yo, we got to do one in Atlanta. It's going to be me and Boosie. Like we have been talking about doing it. And he did the live one when we were in Atlanta. And he's just such an amazing person and so funny. Like I love guys that are really open and funny.
Right.
And that have a good time with it and can be honest about, what goes on in the bedroom, even if they sound crazy talking about certain things.
Because they be sounding crazy sometimes.
Yeah, and I think Cardi B came on recently. That was great for us. That was her second time on. And so I feel like she's a lot more cautious in what she says now, but she's still good.
Yeah.
No matter what.
It's an interesting podcast, and it's like you have to not be guarded to talk about stuff that we talk about privately all the time. You and I talk about sex. I mean, I feel like girlfriends talk about sex.
Yeah. And that was really how it started because I feel like guys don't know how much we talk about sex when they're not around. And I feel like we're a lot more open about things.
Yeah.
Than guys are. I feel like guys don't have people to talk to like how we have each other to talk to.
I wish they would.
Yeah.
It would be better. It would be a better experience.
would.
Yeah.
Because we'll talk about things like, I don't know if guys do that. We'll be like, yeah, did you see it was like this? And then he was like that. And then he said this. And then he did that. But it felt like this.
Yeah.
I don't think guys do that. They'll be like, I hit.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah. Boo. Okay, what's next for lip service?
We did do a tour with Live Nation.
Yeah.
I think next time I want to do just spot dates.
Okay.
And I don't think I would do that again. It was exhausting. It was a lot.
It seems like a lot.
And it was costly. And so I think for lip service, I do want to do some more live shows. I want to do it based around things, like let's just say Meg Thee Stallion's album's coming out. Let's do a special lip service for her and her fans to come out to.
The hotties.
Yeah, for the hotties to come out. Or, things like that.
Yeah.
Imagine we would have did Drake and 21 Savage for her loss, and had like that. Stuff like that could be really amazing.
Really cool.
Because I don't feel like we have enough platforms. And that was another reason why I started it in the first place, where it's all coming from a woman's perspective.
Yes.
And there are some great ones out there. I don't feel like we have enough, though. Like if you think about some of the popular podcasts, a lot of them don't even have women on there at all.
Yeah.
So we do need this space. And when you see like, year-end wrap-up shows, a lot of times you don't see like a cast of women talking about what's going on.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I know that we need more is because whenever we post a clip from lip service, people are like, oh my God. I'm like, we're adults. We are over 21.
Yeah.
And we all have sex. So I don't understand
that's what the podcast is about. And it's crazy to me because like I also feel like it is a race thing too. Because if you think about like a Dr. Ruth or Call Her Daddy or Chelsea Handler, there's a lot of things that they get away with saying and doing. And then if we do it, it's like, ew, I can't believe that these are supposed to, who cares? Why aren't we talking about more important things in the world? Like we do talk about it all.
Yeah, but not on this podcast.
But we also can't act like sex and your body is not an important thing to be talking about.
Right, yeah.
And so there should be no shame in it because I feel like a lot of us grew up with these taboo feelings of, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't talk about it. Then how do you learn anything?
And that's why people are not having great sex is because a lot of us grew up with shame and not being comfortable talking about our bodies or not talking about what we like, what we don't like.
Right. I agree. And, so I feel like the podcast, when I started it, it is like to take away the shame that people have when it comes to talking about sex.
Yes.
And it can be a fun topic.
It's fun. It's a good time.
And guess what? A lot of us are doing it.
That's what I heard. Maybe not me, but just like I'm not having sex, you're not drinking. So before I end every show, I like to ask general off the wall random questions.
Okay.
So are you okay with that?
No.
Okay. Well, that's too bad. Okay. Angie May, as I call you. What keeps you up at night?
Money, thinking about things and what I have to pay for.
Okay. What's one advice you wish you could give up?
Chicken.
You like chicken?
I'd be a vegetarian if I gave up chicken.
Okay. What's your biggest professional regret?
Not having started my investing earlier.
Okay. If you weren't in radio, what would you be doing?
Advertising.
You still have that vision of yourself working in
advertising?
advertising?
Because I think that helps me with what I do.
It does.
Like when I talk to, the sales department and clients, they're always like, put Angela there.
What's one thing you've always wanted to try, but you've been too scared to?
Skydiving, but I don't think I would.
Okay.
I've seen video where it didn't work out.
You have?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
You're so smart.
Okay. What's the costliest mistake you've ever made?
Opening a business.
Okay.
Because, it's really costly. And there's been so many things that have gone wrong that could have been prevented.
Okay. What's the best thing that happened to you this year?
I got my own show.
I know that's right. Who's the last person that texted you?
Paul Rosenberg.
Okay. When is the last time you cursed someone out?
I do it all the time in the car, but they can't hear me.
Okay. When's the last time you were cursed out?
Probably in a car where I can't hear them because of how I drive.
What trend in radio would you like to see end?
I feel like it has already ended, but the whole shock jock. And then I would say also, when it comes to politics, people trying to attack people and be really nasty because you don't believe the same things that they believe.
Okay. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that And I'm in the process of trying to make this happen. That I help a lot of other people open businesses.
Okay. What is, if you could pick one song as the soundtrack to your life?
Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Cyndi Lauper.
I love that.
It's just looking at your hair. It made me think of that.
Okay, perfect. What do you think my song would be?
What would your song be? Yankin' by Lady.
Okay.
Leave that in.
Last question. If you could, this is so inappropriate. Last question. If you could ask God one question and God would answer loud and clear, what would you ask God?
What are the Powerball numbers? No, I'm sorry. That's wrong.
Ange, please.
No, that was wrong. I did think about that when it hit that $2 billion
in Los Angeles County.
Like, God, could you please tell me what is it?
Please, God. It's me, Margaret.
If I could ask God one question and he would give me the answer loud and clear, what would it be? Who should I be with?
Okay. That's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm sure we would all ask that.
That's a really good question. It's been a pleasure. It's been so fun speaking to you. Please don't make this the last time.
Jasmine, you're going to call me right after this.
Well, we're going somewhere right after
yes,
this. Yeah.
What are you talking about? Don't make this the last time.
That we sit down like
I don't want a generic ending like that. Do you say that to everyone?
I do.
Okay.
Listen, it's been so fun talking to you.
Don't make this the last time.
Thank you for doing me a favor and coming on my show, Brutally Honest. I can't wait for your new radio show. I'm excited about all the businesses. I know you're going to open new businesses, and I can't wait to come to your new mega mansion that is in Brooklyn that I already have my room for.
A mansion in Brooklyn is different than a mansion anywhere else. It's nowhere near as big.
It is, but it is big. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you next week on Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand, only on FOXSOUL.